I was 49 years on Earth believing that I had seen everything that a simple man like me could see until that early morning of March 17th, 2024, when something happened that made me question absolutely everything I thought I knew about Jesus Christ, about God, about good and evil, and especially about the exact date on which this world as we know it will change forever. Because what an entity revealed to me that night, what it showed me about the return of Jesus, and especially the origin of this information coming directly from those you would least expect, will make your blood run cold in your veins just like mine ran cold. And to this day, years later, I still wake up at 3 in the morning in a cold sweat, remembering those red eyes, that voice that echoed inside my head, and especially that impossible truth that I have carried alone since then. And if you are ready to find out why a demon, literally a being of darkness, would be warning about the imminent return of Jesus and why that should scare us more than anything, subscribe to this channel now and turn on the notification bell, because what will you hear? The next few minutes can shake the foundations of your faith and prepare you for something that is closer than any pastor or priest has ever told you, and I promise every word here is true, even though my mind still struggles to accept it, even though part of me wishes it had just been a nightmare, because after that night, I was never the same man again. My name is Paulo Henrique Cardoso, and for 49 years, I was just another Brazilian trying to survive in this complicated country. Another honest worker who woke up early, came back late, and slept exhausted with no time to question the great mysteries of existence. Because when you're worried about paying bills, putting food on the table, not losing your job, you don't have the luxury of philosophizing about the meaning of life. But then, in September of 2023, my life fell apart in such a brutal way, so complete that it forced me to look back. Questions that I always avoided. My wife Ana Beatriz, to whom I was married for 26 years, left me not for another man, not because of lack of love, but because, as she said with tears streaming down her face, I became an empty shadow, a man who was present physically but absent in all other aspects. And she was right. I was empty inside. I had become an automaton who went to work as a truck driver. I came home, I ate in silence. I watched television without really watching anything, and I slept. Without dreaming, I woke up and repeated everything again, as if I had lived. It was just that I would survive until I died. And when she left, taking our 2 twin daughters, Julia and Mariana, who were 22 years old at the time, she also took the last thread that connected me to some purpose, to some reason to keep trying. And in the following months, I sank into a deep depression of the kind that makes you question why the hell you are still breathing. Why you still get out of bed? Why don't you just give up altogether? I started drinking not socially but compulsively, half a bottle of cheap whiskey every night just to be able to sleep without thinking, just to silence the thoughts that screamed in my head, saying that I wasted my life, that I was mediocre, that I was never good enough as a husband, as a father, as a man. I lost 15 kilos in 3 months. My small apartment in Guarulhos became a deposit of empty bottles, dirty clothes, piles of dishes in the sink, smell of mold and abandonment. My friends stopped calling after I refused too many invitations. My family, my 73-year-old mother and my younger brother tried to intervene, but I savagely pushed them away with silences that hurt more than words. I wanted to be alone, immersed in my misery, in my guilt, in my existential void that grew every day until that night on March 17th, when everything changed in such an impossible and terrifying way that to this day, I don't know if it was a blessing or a curse. It was exactly 2 hours and 37 minutes in the morning when I woke up, not because of external noise, but because of an internal feeling of presence that I was not alone in the apartment, and before you think it was just drunken paranoia. I need to say that on that specific night, I was sober. I had run out of money to buy drinks, so I was facing a blank night in a cold sweat, with hands shaking mild but present withdrawal symptoms, and it was in this vulnerable, broken state with psychic defenses in tatters that I felt that presence in the room. The temperature dropped drastically in a matter of seconds. My breath began to come out in visible clouds, as if it were inside a freezer, and then I saw at the foot of my bed a figure that shouldn't exist, couldn't exist, but was there as real as anything I've ever seen in my life. It was an approximate humanoid shape. 6 feet tall, but it was definitely not human. The skin, if I can call it that, it looked like it was made of solidified shadow. It wasn't black. It was the absence of light, as if it absorbed all the light around it. The eyes were intense red embers, with no pupils, no iris, just burning redness that seemed to burn my soul when they looked at me directly. And the most disturbing thing was that I wasn't wearing stereotypical demonic clothes with horns and a tail. I wasn't wearing a black tunic. I was, wearing a dark grey suit, perfectly cut white shirt, black tie like executive going to a business meeting, and somehow that made everything even more terrifying because it meant that this thing understood our world. It understood how to disguise itself, how to move among us. And my first rational instinct was to think that I was hallucinating, that alcohol withdrawal was causing delirium tremens, that none of it was real. But then the thing speaked not with a voice that came from my mouth, but directly, inside my head resonating at a frequency that made my bones vibrate, and said, Paulo Henrique Cardoso, 49 years old, truck driver, born in 12 April 1974, son of Maria das Graças and João Cardoso, married for 26 years to Ana Beatriz, father of Julia and Mariana, currently living alone, drinking, to forget considering suicide 3 times in the last week. I need you to listen to me, because I have a message that will change not only your life, but potentially the destiny of many. I tried to scream, but my throat was closed. I tried to move, but my body was paralyzed, not by external physical force, but by pure terror. That type of primordial fear that our ancestors felt when they encountered a predator in the dark. Fear that shuts down higher cognitive functions and reduces you to a scared animal. And the creature must have sensed my terror, because it raised its hand in an almost human gesture of peace, and said in a surprisingly gentle tone, I didn't come to hurt you, Paulo. If I wanted to harm you, you would have been dead a long time ago. I have been watching you for months, since your wife left, since you started to fall apart internally. And I can feel that you are at the limit, that you are ready to hear truths that most humans couldn't bear to hear. So first, I need you to take 3 deep breaths and try to control your panic, because if you pass out now, I will leave, and you will lose your only chance to understand what is really happening in this world. And as absurd as it may seem, I obeyed. I took a deep breath once, twice, 3 times, and I felt my cognitive functions slowly returning. So with a trembling voice, I managed to ask what you are, and the creature smiled, not with a mouth, because I didn't exactly have a mouth, but I felt the smile in my mind. And she replied, you already know what I am. Paul, your Catholic upbringing, your childhood going to Mass on Sundays with your mother already taught you what I am. I am what you humans call a demon, dark entity, fallen angel, follower of Lucifer, enemy of God for millennia. Although these definitions are gross simplifications of a much more complex reality, but yes, in essence I am what your nightmares always imagined existed, and my body literally froze in that moment. Not metaphorically, not in a poetic way, but physically. I felt as if my blood had turned to ice. I felt every muscle contract, every hair stand on end, every instinct screaming to run, to pray, to invoke divine protection. But at the same time, another part of me, part curious, part that always questioned dogmas, part that always felt that reality was stranger than what we were told, that part wanted to hear, wanted to know. And so I asked, why are you here? Why did you appear to me? And the answer I received was so unexpected, so completely off script, that I expected my mind took seconds to process. The demon sat down, not on a chair because there was no chair there, but simply suspended in the air in a sitting position. He crossed his legs with an almost aristocratic elegance and said, Paulo, I came to warn you about something that is about to happen, something that will change the entire game that we have played for millennia, something that even we on the other side are preparing for with some apprehension. And before you ask, I am not here to tempt you. I am not here to offer riches or power in exchange for your soul. These are outdated methods that we rarely use anymore because we discovered that you humans condemn yourselves. Very well alone without our help, I didn't come here for you. Specifically, I came because I need a specific message to be spread, and you, because of your current position, broke desperate with nothing to lose, with no reputation to protect, with no career to risk. You are the perfect messenger because when you tell what I'm going to reveal to you, people will think you've gone crazy. They will laugh, they will mock, but a few will listen. They will feel the truth in your words, and they will start preparing, and that's all that matters. So I asked, still trembling, what message do you want me to spread? And he leaned forward, those burning red eyes fixed on mine, and said the words that still echo in my mind every night. Jesus Christ is coming back, Paul, and not in the way the churches taught you, not in some distant future, not in thousands of years, not when humanity is ready, not when everyone is converted. Jesus was warned by God to return before the end of 2026, less than 3 years. From now, and when this happens, the game we have been playing since Eden, since the fall, since I convinced Eve to bite the apple, this game ends, and honestly, after millennia of doing what I do, part of me feels relief. I sat there on the bed, unable to process what I had just heard. A demon, a literal servant of darkness, was telling me that Jesus was coming back. And not only that, it was telling me that there was a specific deadline, a warning given by God. And I thought maybe this was the trick. Maybe this was the elaborate lie to make me spread misinformation, to create false panic, to discredit the real message. But before I could verbalize these doubts, the demon said, reading my thoughts, "You think I'm lying. You think this is an elaborate trap. And I understand your distrust. After all, lying is supposedly what we do best. But Paul, let me ask you a question. Why would I lie about this? What would I gain by creating false expectation about Christ's return? If Jesus didn't come back, if the date passed and nothing happened, it would just strengthen skepticism. It would strengthen disbelief. It would make more people doubt prophecies. And that would theoretically be good for me, right? But it's not a lie, Paul. It's absolute, terrible, and inevitable truth. And the reason I'm telling you is because, unlike what you think, not all of us on the dark side are monsters without conscience. Some of us are tired of war, tired of destruction, tired of being what we have become. And when God issued this decree, this final ultimatum to Jesus, some of us saw it as a sign that the end had truly come. So I asked with a breaking voice, why God warned Jesus to return. Now why this rush? Why before 2026? And the devil sighed a deep sound that seemed to carry the weight of eons and said, why humanity has reached a critical point. Paul, at the point of no return. You have free will, you always had. It was the most dangerous gift that God could give. But with this free will, you are on the verge of completely destroying yourselves. Not just some of you, not just a nation or region, but the species, the entire Earth itself. Your nuclear weapons are enough to make the planet uninhabitable 12 times. Your corporate greed is destroying ecosystems that took billions of years to form. Your ideological, religious, political divisions have reached a level of hatred that we have not seen since the Crusades, since the Inquisition, since the Great Wars. And the worst thing is that you have lost connection with the sacred. You have lost connection with the divine that exists within each one. You have become worshippers of money, technology, of temporal power, of ephemeral pleasures. You have completely forgotten why you were created, what was the original purpose of humanity. So God, in His wisdom, has decided that direct intervention is necessary, not to punish. Although punishment comes to some, but to save, to rescue, to separate the wheat from the chaff before the whole field is burned. And Jesus, who has watched everything since He ascended 2,000 years ago, Jesus who has wept for the humanity He loves so much, Jesus was given direct order, come back before it is too late. Come back and gather those who still belong to me. Come back and establish kingdom that was always promised. But this time, no metaphors, no parables, no kindness that can be ignored. This time with power, with authority, with glory that cannot be denied. I felt tears begin to run down my face, not of joy, as you would expect from a Christian hearing about Jesus' return, but of pure terror, of sudden realization that if this was true, if it was really happening, then life as we knew it was about to end. Then families would be separated. Then some would be taken and others left. Then there would be judgment, not abstract, not theoretical, but real, concrete, inevitable. And I, who had spent a year wallowing in alcohol, in self-pity and detachment from God, I knew exactly which side of the divide I would be on. And the devil must have sensed my despair growing, because I said it with something that almost seemed like compassion. Paulo, I didn't tell you this to scare you, although I understand that it is terrifying. I told you because you still have little time, but you have less than 3 years to change, to reconnect, to prepare, and more importantly, to warn others who are willing to listen, because although I am what I am, although I have spent millennia trying to keep humans away from God, there is part of me that remembers how it was before the fall part, that remembers the light of the glory of being in the presence of the Creator. And this part, even corrupt, even distorted, does not want to see all of you destroyed. It wants at least some to be saved. So I asked, still crying, but why would a demon care? What do you gain from this? And his answer left me completely speechless. He said, "Maybe nothing, Paul, maybe my own destruction, because when Jesus comes back, when kingdom is established, we will be the fallen ones judged finally, after millennia of postponement, after millennia of extension of grace. Even for us judgment will come, and for most of us it will mean lake of fire, it will mean eternal torment, it will mean end of any hope of redemption. But there is small possibility mentioned once by obscure prophet, that at the last moment for those of us who show some shred of repentance, some spark of what we were before the fall, there may be mercy, there may be annihilation instead of eternal torment. There may be peaceful end instead of infinite suffering, and that small hope. Paul, this remote possibility is what brings me here tonight. It is what makes me risk the wrath of Lucifer, who will surely find out that I told you this. It is what makes me choose sides, even if it is too late for my own salvation. The silence that followed was absolute. I could hear my own heart beating fast. I could hear my shallow breathing. I could hear the world outside completely oblivious to the impossible conversation happening in this room in Guarulhos. So I finally asked the question I needed to ask: if this is true, if Jesus is really coming back before 2026. How do you know? How do demons know God's schedule? And he answered, because even though we are fallen, Paul, even expelled from heaven, we still have connections. We still have ways of knowing there are angels who have not completely fallen, who still pity us, who sometimes, in moments of weakness, share information. There are human prophets who, when they have visions, when they enter into spiritual ecstasy, transmit not only to the physical realm, but also to the entire spiritual realm, including the dark places we dwell. There are cracks in reality, moments when the veil between dimensions becomes thin enough for us to see, hear, feel what is being planned. And 6 months ago, there was a meeting in heaven, not an ordinary meeting, but an extraordinary council, where God summoned cherubim, seraphim, archangels, all the heavenly powers. And in that meeting, the decree was issued, time was up, patience arrived in the end. Jesus Christ, my beloved Son, will receive full authority to return and establish kingdom before the human calendar marks 1,000 days after 2025. And when this decree was issued, Paul, we felt, all of us, in the darkness. We felt like a tremor that ran through all creation. We felt like the sound of a distant trumpet announcing the end of the game, and some of us, Lucifer included, were furious. They started planning final war. They started recruiting more aggressively. They started to sow more chaos. But others like me felt something different. We felt deep tiredness. We felt secret relief. We felt that finally, maybe we can rest. Then something in me broke completely, and I began to cry. Not that restrained male cry, but deep sobs that came from the depths of the soul. Screams of anguish, of fear, of regret, of despair. And surprisingly, the devil didn't laugh. He didn't mock. He didn't feed on my pain as I would have expected him to do. Instead, he came closer. He placed a hand that was strangely warm on my shoulder, and I should have felt disgust. I should have felt spiritual burn. But all I felt was strange compassion emanating from that creature. And he said, "Let it out, Paul. Let all the pain out, all the guilt, all the regret. Because when you stop crying, when you regain your composure, I need to show you something. I need to give you proof of what I told you, because I know that part of you still doubts, still thinks this could be an elaborate trick. So I will give you an encounter that very few living humans have had. I will show you Jesus, not the Jesus who will return in glory, but the Jesus who is waiting for the Jesus, who watches the Jesus, who prepares for the final return. And when you see it, when you look into his eyes, when you feel his presence, you will never doubt again. You will never question again. And you will live each remaining day with absolute certainty of what end. The time of choice has come so close that there is no longer the luxury of postponing spiritual decisions." And while I was still processing these words, trying to understand how the hell literal demon could show me Jesus, the room around me began to change. Physical reality began to distort. The walls of my simple apartment began to dissolve, as if they were made of fog. The bed beneath me, it remained solid, but everything else began to disappear, replaced by something completely different. The temperature was no longer cold now, it was pleasantly warm. The darkness of the night was replaced by soft golden light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The smell of mold and alcohol in my apartment was replaced by indescribable fragrance like incense, but purer like flowers, but more intense, as if every good smell I had ever experienced was combined and refined. And then I realized that it was no longer in my room. It was in a place that I cannot adequately describe, because there are no words in Portuguese or in any human language to capture what my eyes saw. It was like being in the sky, but not the sky of religious paintings, not fluffy clouds and golden gates. It was a dimension where physics worked differently, where colors existed that I had never seen, where space stretched infinitely, but also seemed contained, where I could feel the presence of billions of beings. But I was also completely alone, and the devil was still by my side. But now he seemed diminished, somehow less solid, less present, as if this place weakened its essence. And he whispered almost reverently, "We are on the threshold." Paulo, on the border between physical and spiritual realm, in a place where time does not exist as you know it, where past, present, and future coexist, and it is coming. Get ready, because what you are about to see will change you fundamentally. There is no going back after this. And you who are listening now, let me pause here, because I need you to understand the magnitude of what was happening to me. I, Paulo Henrique Cardoso, ordinary man with nothing special, no spiritual gifts, no holiness, no preparation, was about to see Jesus Christ, not in a dream, not in a vision, not in an abstract mystical experience, but face to face, eye to eye, as real as anyone I have ever encountered. And as this demon stood there preparing me, I thought of all the people around the world who at that moment were also going through their own crises, through their own awakenings. And you who are listening to me now, tell me in the comments where you are watching, tell me your city, your country, because it is incredible how messages like this find exactly the right people at the right time. Maybe you are in São Paulo, going through the same doubts I went through. Maybe you are in Lisbon, questioning everything you learned. Maybe you are in Luanda, or Maputo, or Vancouver, or anywhere in the world, feeling that something big is about to happen, and leave your comment, because when you see how many people around the planet are feeling the same thing, you realize that it is not a coincidence. You realize that it is a collective awakening happening just before the promised return. Then he appeared, and every time I remember this moment, my body reacts physically. My heart races, my hands sweat, tears start to form, because no matter how many times I relive this memory, the impact never diminishes. Jesus did not appear dramatically with explosion of light or thunder from the heavens. He simply was there, where a second before he was not, as if he had always been there, patiently waiting for me to finally notice him. And the first thing that completely shocked me is that he looked nothing like the images I saw my whole life in the churches, in the pictures, on the statues. This one did not. He was a blonde, blue-eyed Jesus with fair European skin. This was a man from the Middle East. His skin was olive brown, deeply tanned by the relentless sun of the Judean desert. His hair was black, not light, brown-black, like ebony, and wavy, falling to just below his shoulders, in natural curls that looked like they had never seen a modern comb. His eyes were brown, so dark, they almost looked black. But when you looked into them, it was like looking into the depths of the entire universe, like seeing all the stars, all the galaxies, all of creation reflected in those pupils. He was approximately 1 meter tall and 75 tall, nothing exceptional by our standards, but I knew that for his time he was of average height. His face had distinct Semitic features, prominent nose, not small and delicate, but strong, and defined high cheekbones that gave his face an angular structure. He had a beard, not that perfectly trimmed beard from the paintings, but a natural dark beard that covered part of his face. Grown but not too long, his hands were what made me fall to my knees instantly. They were calloused, carpenter's hands with scars from years of working wood. But in the center of each palm there was a mark that was not a bloody open wound, but a luminous scar that glowed softly with pure white light and pulsed gently like a heartbeat. And the same mark on his feet on the sides, visible through the simple sandals he was wearing. And he was wearing a simple tunic in faded beige color, nothing elaborate, nothing adorned, just pieces, simple fabric that any poor man of that time would wear. But there was something about the way the light interacted with that fabric, as if the fabric itself was alive, as if each fiber contained its own light waiting to be released. But none of that, none of these physical descriptions capture what really mattered. What really destroyed me completely was his presence. The energy that emanated from him was pure, concentrated love. Love so intense, so absolute, so unconditional, that my mind had no frame of reference to process it, because all the love I had ever experienced in my life, love from my mother, love from my ex-wife, love from my daughters, love from friends, all this love combined was not even close to 1% of what I felt radiating from this being. And it was not sentimental love. It was not love based on liking. You love that depends on that you. Being good or deserving was love that simply was, love that existed, regardless of any condition or qualification. Love that saw you completely, all your darkness, all your shame, all your sin, all your inner rot, and loved you exactly the same, not in spite of these things, not ignoring these things, but through these things. Love that said, I know everything you did, everything. You thought everything you hid, and none of that changes at all how much I love you. And the impact of that love was devastating, because for the first time in my life I felt completely seen, not superficially, not partially, but to the very core of my soul, to the darkest corners I hid even from myself. And to be seen like this, and yet to be loved like this, broke something in me, broke years of self-hatred, of feeling inadequacy, of believing I was human trash, unworthy of love, unworthy of salvation. I fell to my knees, tears flowing uncontrollably, sobs shaking my entire body, and I couldn't even form coherent words, just guttural noises of pain, of relief, of gratitude, of regret, all mixed in an emotional tsunami that dragged me. And Jesus approached his bare feet, made no sound against the golden surface of the place where we were, and when he got close to me, he knelt down, also placing himself at my level. He didn't stand looking from above. He didn't maintain divine distance. He came to me. He came down to where I was, and placed his hands, both hands, with luminous marks in the palms over my head. And the heat, oh God, the heat that flowed from those hands was not physical heat that burns. It was heat that heals, that penetrates every cell, every atom, every particle of your being, and dissolves every pain, every wound, every trauma you have carried for decades. I literally physically felt back pain that I had had for years disappear. I felt chronic migraines dissolve. I felt tension in muscles that I didn't even know were tense relax completely. But more than that, I felt emotional wounds begin to heal. Guilt that I carried for the failure of my marriage began to dissolve. Shame I felt for becoming an alcoholic began to evaporate. Self-hatred began to be replaced by something new, something I had never felt before. Real, genuine self-love, not arrogance, not narcissism, but deep understanding that I had intrinsic value simply by existing, simply by being God's creation. And then Jesus spoke, and his voice was not thunderous. It was not authoritative in the threatening sense. It was gentle, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. It was gentle, but it resonated in my chest, like physical vibration. It was words, but it was also more than words. It was direct transmission of meaning, of essence, of truth, unfiltered by linguistic limitations. And he said, Paul, my son, my beloved, you suffered so much, you carried weight that was not yours to carry you, believed lies about yourself that whispered in your ear all your life, and now you are here. Broken thinking it is too late thinking. You are unworthy, thinking there is no hope for someone like you. But let me tell you, truth. Let me replace lies you believed with certainty that comes straight from the heart of the Father. You are loved, deeply, totally, eternally loved. Not because you did something to deserve it, not because you were good enough, but simply because you exist, because every particle of your being was woven with love. It was created with purpose, it was formed with divine intention, and everything that happened, your pain, your suffering, your fall, none of it was waste, none of it was in vain, because through these experiences you developed compassion, you developed humility, you have developed the ability to recognize your own need for salvation. And these qualities, Paul, these are exactly the qualities I need in those who will serve me in the days to come. And then I had the courage, I don't know where it came from, to ask something that had been burning inside me since the devil had appeared. So I whispered with a broken voice, It's true, Lord. It's true that God told you to return before 2026. It's true that time is up. The end is near. And Jesus sighed a deep sigh carried with the weight of eons of cosmic responsibility, of tragic love for humanity, that he knew was about to be divided. And he said, "Yes, Paul, it is true." The Father, in his infinite mercy, waited a long time, gave countless chances, sent prophets, sent signs, sent warnings through generations, through centuries, through millennia. But now time has come to an end. Not because Father is impatient, not because he has lost hope, but because humanity has reached the point where self-destruction is imminent and inevitable without direct intervention. You have created weapons that can destroy planet 12 times. You have poisoned air, water, earth. You have divided yourselves into tribes of hatred, political, religious, ideological. Each side convinced of its own justice, each side willing to destroy another. You worship money, power, pleasure, technology, everything except the Creator who gave it all to you. And what is worse, you have lost something fundamental. You have lost the ability to recognize sacred. You have lost reverence. You have lost fear. Not fear as fear, but fear as recognition that there is something greater than you, something that deserves respect. Adoration, voluntary submission. And Jesus continued, his face showing deep sadness, mixed with determination. I watched everything, Paul. Since I ascended, since I returned to the Father, I watched every war, every genocide, every child starving, every woman raped, every injustice, every tear shed, and I cried with each one. I cried more tears than all the oceans of the earth combined, because I love you, I love humanity with an intensity that you cannot understand, because you are special creations, unique in the entire universe, with the capacity for free will, with the ability to choose love or hate, light or darkness, God or self. And for 2,000 years, I waited. I waited for them to wake up. I waited for them to remember. I waited for them to come back. But now Father said enough. Said it's time. Paul, it's time to separate sheep from goats, wheat from chaff, those who chose me from those who rejected me, and gave me absolute total authority to return no longer as a gentle lamb, no longer as a suffering servant, but as King, as Judge, as Lord of hosts. And when I come, when I appear in the heavens with power and great glory, every knee will bend, not because I force it, but because in the face of the naked truth of divine reality, without veils, without filters, impossible to remain standing, pride melts. Self-righteousness evaporates, lies that we tell ourselves dissolve, and all that remains is the naked truth of who we really chose to serve during our life. So I ask tremblingly, which side I'm on, Lord? When you return, will I be taken or left? Will I be a sheep or a goat, wheat or tares? And Jesus looked at me with such tenderness, such compassion that made me cry even more, and said, Paul, your choice has not been made yet. It is being made right now in this conversation, in the decisions you will make in the coming days, months, years, until my return. Because salvation is not a single event. It is not a prayer you said as a child. It is not going to church on Sundays. It is not following religious rules. Salvation is a continuous, growing, living relationship with me. It is a daily choice of dying to your ego, of surrendering your will to love, as I loved to forgive, as I forgave to serve as I served. And you, Paul, is at critical crossroads. You can go back to your old life of alcohol, of self-pity, of slow giving up. And if you choose that path when I return, I will find you spiritually dead, even if you still breathe physically. Or you can choose now in this moment to get up, cleanse yourself, reconnect with the purpose I gave you before you were even born. And if you choose that path, I promise I will find you ready. I promise that I will recognize you as my promise, that I will say, well done, good and faithful servant, enter into the joy of your Lord. And then Jesus did something I didn't expect. He took my hands in his, those marked, calloused, holy hands, and said, now I need to show you something, Paul. I need to show you, not to scare you, although it will scare you, but to prepare you, to give you a sense of urgency that you will carry for the rest of your days. Because humans are creatures that forget, that they get distracted, that they put off. And there can be no postponement here. There can be no, maybe later. There can't be, when I have time. I will think about it, so I will show you a fragment, little vision of what will happen when I return. And you promise, keep this not as a fantasy, not as a metaphor, but as a literal prophecy of the future that is coming. And I nodded, unable to speak, and Jesus closed his eyes, and suddenly, I was no longer in that golden place. I was in another place. I was on earth. But earth seen from an impossible perspective, as if I were suspended in the sky looking down, and I saw big city. I couldn't identify which one, but it looked like Sao Paulo or Rio or any modern metropolis, skyscrapers, chaotic traffic, millions of people coming and going, completely absorbed in their daily lives, in their problems, in their ambitions. And so, sky torn not metaphorically, not symbolically, literally torn as if it were fabric being cut, and through that slit came light, not light like sun, not light like lamp, but fundamental light, pure essence of illumination that made sun look like weak candle. And within that light I saw human figure, but also more than human, it was Jesus. But glorified was Jesus, as he really is, without limitation of flesh, without restriction of physical form. It was God in perceptible form, and the effect on humanity below was instantaneous and devastating. People on the street froze, all simultaneously looking up. Atheists, skeptics, agnostics, religious. It didn't matter. Everyone saw, everyone knew, and the reactions varied drastically. I saw some fall to their knees instantly, faces in pure adoration, in relief, in indescribable joy. These were the ones who waited, the ones who watched, the ones who kept faith through mockery, through suffering, through doubt. And now, finally their hope came true. But I saw others, many others, most react with absolute terror. I saw people trying to run, but legs wouldn't obey. I saw people screaming, covering eyes, as if they could block vision, but it was impossible to block, because vision was not just physical, it was spiritual. It was burned directly into their souls. I saw people falling, not in worship, but in complete collapse under the weight of divine presence. I saw executives in expensive suits so proud, so confident in their earthly power, reduced to terrified children begging for mercy. They wasted their entire lives. I saw religious leaders who preached about holiness but lived in hypocrisy, trying to hide their secret sins, but there was nowhere to hide because light penetrated everything, revealed everything. And then I saw separation beginning. I literally, physically saw people beginning to shine slightly. Those who had chosen Christ, who had lived in love, who had forgiven, who had served, began to emanate their own soft but growing light, while others around them began to dark. Not that the light around them became darker, but it was as if shadow emanated from them, as if the absence of light became visible, and I saw families being divided, husband shining, wife dimming, or vice versa. I saw bright parents with dark children. I saw decades-old friends discovering that they had chosen opposite paths throughout their lives. And the pain, oh the pain, on the faces of those who realized too late that time was up. That opportunity had passed, that the door of the ark had closed while they were still outside. And then the vision quickly advanced like video at accelerated speed, and I saw those who glowed literally begin to rise, not with effort, not with wings, but simply defying gravity, as if gravity no longer had authority over them. I saw bodies instantly transformed, no longer subject to disease, pain, aging, death. I saw children with cancer healed in the ascension. I saw elderly people in wheelchairs running and jumping as they ascended. I saw the blind seeing the deaf, hearing the mute shouting with joy, as they were taken to meet the Lord in the air. And it was beautiful, more beautiful than anything I have ever seen, but simultaneously, I saw those left behind, and that vision haunts me even today. I saw people trying to hold back those who went up, trying to be taken together, but it didn't work. You couldn't hitch a ride on another's salvation. You couldn't be saved by association. Each person individually either had inner light or didn't, and those who didn't were left watching helplessly as loved ones disappeared into the heavens, and the sound, "Oh God." The sound was a cacophony of heavenly joy and earthly lament, mixed together chants of the rescued, screams of the abandoned, and above all the voice of Jesus, not in words but in presence, saying to each soul individually, "I knew you, I gave you chances, I showed you signs, I sent you messengers, and you chose to reject you, chose your own path, you chose your own gods, and now you reap the consequences of that choice, not because I am cruel, but because free." Will is real choices have consequences. Eternity exists whether you believe it or not. And then vision ended abruptly, and I was back in that golden place with Jesus holding my hands, and I was sobbing uncontrollably because I had understood, I had seen, I had felt, and Jesus said, gently but firmly, "This Paul, this is what is coming, not in 1,000 years, not in 100 years, but in less than 3 years from now." Before the calendar marks 2027, all this will happen, and you are chosen, not because you are special, not because you are holy, not because you are perfect, but because you were broken enough to listen, humble enough to accept, desperate enough to change. So here it is, your mission, your only task between now and my return. Live in love, live in forgiveness, live in service, live in high frequency, not perfectly because you are human and will stumble, but intentionally, consciously conscious, constantly. And as you live this way, you will become light naturally without effort, without preaching, just being, and that light will attract others who are ready. And when they ask you, why have you changed? Why are you different? Why do you have peace in a chaotic world? Then and only then tell your story. Tell what you saw. Tell what you were shown, but not to convince, not to convert, just to testify, to be a witness to what you experienced. And let each soul decide for themselves. Let each person exercise free will, because just as I do not force anyone to me, loving you should not force anyone to believe. And then Jesus slowly let go of my hands and started to walk away, and panic took over me. Panic of being left alone, of going back to that empty life without this love, without this presence. And I screamed, don't leave me, please don't abandon me, I can't do this alone. And Jesus stopped. He turned and smiled. Not a condescending smile, but the smile of someone who knows a wonderful secret, and said, Paul, I never leave you. I never abandon you. Even when you don't feel me, I'm here, inside your heart, inside your spirit, inside every breath you take, because when you accepted me, when you opened your heart for me, I entered and I dwell in you. Now you and I are one, just as I and the Father are one, just as all who accept me are one with me. So do not fear, do not doubt. Simply remember this moment when doubts come, when despair tries to return, when the world ridicules you, when demons try to make you question your sanity. Remember my face, remember my hands, remember the love you felt, and know that it was real, more real than anything else in your life. And this certainty, this memory will sustain you until the day you see me again. No, in vision, not in transcendent experience, but face to face when I come in glory, and you will be ready, my son, you will be ready. And with those words, Jesus disappeared, not gradually, not walking away. He was simply not there anymore. And the golden light began to fade, and the surrounding environment began to solidify again into familiar shapes. And within a few seconds, I was back in my room in Guarulhos, sitting on the bed, dirty, untidy, but completely transformed. And the devil was still standing there in the corner, looking at me with an expression that I can only describe as deep melancholy. And he said, "Did you see? Paulo, did you find him? Did you feel what I lost? What we all, that we fall, we lose. And the pain of that loss is greater than any torment that lake of fire could inflict, because to know that love and then not have it anymore is agony beyond all physical description. So yes, I brought you to it, not just to save you, but perhaps selfishly to feel closeness to that love again, even if through you, even for a few minutes. And now I have done my part. I have warned you. I have shown you what very few living humans have received, and my part here is finished. What you do with it is choice. Your choices have eternal consequences, so choose wisely. Paulo Henrique Cardoso, choose with full awareness of what is at stake." And then the demon also disappeared, not dramatically, just gradually dissolving, until there was nothing left except my messy room lit now by the dim light of dawn coming through the dirty window. And I looked at the digital clock on the nightstand. It said 5 o'clock and 43 minutes in the morning, and I realized that all of that whole impossible experience had lasted just over 3 hours. 3 hours. That changed absolutely everything. And in the days that followed, oh God, the days that followed, I couldn't function. Normally I couldn't do anything resembling a normal routine. I didn't sleep properly for almost an entire week. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that face. I saw those deep brown eyes. I saw those scarred hands. And I woke up sweating, crying, shaking, not with fear, but with the overwhelming longing of wanting to return to that place, that presence, that love. I tried to tell someone, my brother, who called me worried because he wasn't answering messages. I tried to explain, but the words came out, confused, disjointed, crazy, and I saw concern on his face. I saw him thinking that I had finally freaked out, that alcohol had destroyed my brain, that I needed psychiatric help. So I stopped trying, I stopped explaining, and simply, I said, "I'm fine. I'm going through something, but I'll be fine." And he clearly didn't believe it. But what else could he do? Spontaneous crying became part of my life without warning. In the middle of mundane tasks like making coffee or taking a shower, tears would just start flowing. Not tears of sadness, but of something I have no name. Gratitude mixed with emotional overload, mixed with reverent terror, of having seen something that humans were not supposed to see. Not yet. Not before the designated time and weight of responsibility. Oh, the weight I felt was overwhelming. Because now I knew I didn't believe I didn't have faith. I didn't expect I knew with absolute certainty that Jesus was coming back. That time was running out. That every person around me was heading towards eternity without having any idea of what awaited them. And how I could just go back to living as if nothing had changed, how I could watch football, worry about bills, talk about the weather when I had cosmic information burning inside my chest, but at the same time, how I could share it without sounding completely insane, without alienating people, without being ridiculed. And I felt completely alone, carrying the truth that it was too big, too heavy, too important for an ordinary person like me. There were dark moments during that first week, when I thought maybe it would be better if I had died that night before the meeting, because at least then I wouldn't carry this burden. I wouldn't have this impossible mission. I wouldn't live with the acute consciousness of a cosmic clock ticking time until the end of the era. But then I remembered Jesus's words, "You and I are one, I never leave you." And I felt that presence, that warmth in the center of my chest. And I knew that I wasn't really alone, that he was with me always. And that gave me enough strength to one more day. Approximately 10 days after the meeting, I did something I hadn't done in over a year. I went back to the church, not the traditional Catholic church where I grew up, because I knew I wouldn't find what I needed there, but a small evangelical church near my apartment that I always ignored. But that Sunday morning feeling strong compulsion. I walked there. I went in the middle of the service and sat in the back trying to be invisible. And the pastor was preaching about repentance, about Jesus's return, about being ready. And every word he said resonated with what I had experienced. But I also felt frustration, because he talked about return as a distant event, hypothetical, something that maybe would happen in some indefinite future. But I knew I had seen it. I had heard its specific time frame less than 3 years, and I wanted to scream. I wanted to go up to the pulpit and say, "You don't understand. It's sure, it's not. Someday, it's soon." But I held back, because I remembered Jesus' instruction to share only when asked, only with those who were ready after the service. When people were leaving, elderly woman approximately 70-something years old approached me, her eyes fixed on me with strange intensity, and said, "Young man, there was light around you during the service. I saw with my own eyes you had an encounter with the divine recently." And I felt as if I had been punched in the stomach, because here was external confirmation validation that I had not imagined that it had been real. And I nodded, unable to speak, and she smiled kindly, said, "You don't need to tell me now, but when you are ready, when you need to share, look for me. My name is Donna Teresa, and I know how to recognize those who have been touched by the Lord, because I myself was touched 50 years ago, and I have carried that mark ever since." And she walked away, leaving me there shaking. And that was the point, turning point, because I realized I wasn't completely alone, that there were others who would understand, others who had experienced something similar, maybe not identical, but similar enough to not think I was crazy. I began slowly, very slowly, to integrate experience into my practical life. I remembered the instructions of the devil and Jesus to live in a high frequency of making conscious choices, to love, to forgive, to serve. So I started small, very small. First thing was to completely stop drinking, and surprisingly it was easy. I didn't have severe withdrawal. I didn't have an irresistible desire. I simply lost interest completely. Because how do you go back to chemical anesthetic after experiencing pure divine love? Is impossible. Second thing was to start morning routine of prayer and meditation. I woke up at 6 o'clock every morning. I sat in silence for 20 minutes, simply breathing, remembering experience, reconnecting with that presence in my chest. And in those moments I felt peace that transcended circumstances. Third thing was starting deliberate gratitude practice every night before bed. I mentally listed 3 things I was grateful for. It started out hard because life was still objectively bad. Was still alone, still unemployed, still broke. But I pushed myself. I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful to have a roof over my head. I'm grateful to have experienced that encounter. And slowly, over weeks, This practice began to change something fundamental in my perspective. I started to notice good things that were always there, but I ignored it. I began to see beauty in the sunset, in the smile of a stranger on the street, in a bird singing in the morning, and with this change in perspective, with this gradual increase in frequency, things began to change externally as well. First significant synchronicity happened approximately 3 weeks after the encounter. I was walking aimlessly through the city, just walking along, processing, thinking, and I passed a small cafe that I had never noticed before, and something compelled me to go in. I bought a simple coffee. I sat at a table in the corner, and a man approximately my age, maybe 52, 53, approached and asked if I could share a table because the place was full, and I agreed, and we started talking about trivialities, football, politics, weather, and then, I don't know why, I casually mentioned that I was going through spiritual transformation, and his eyes immediately lit up, and he said, "I have been too, for 6 months. I had a dream, I had a vision. I can't explain, but it changed everything." And we began to share our experiences cautiously, at first, but with growing confidence, and I discovered that Mark was his name. I had also received warning about the imminent return of Jesus, not through a devil, like me, but through an angel who appeared in a dream. But the message was consistent. Time is running out. Get ready, help. Others prepare live in love. And we talked for 4 hours. We lost track of time completely. And when we finally separated, we exchanged numbers. We promised to keep in touch. And for the first time since the experience, I didn't feel alone. I had found a brother on the journey, someone who understood. Synchronicities continued to increase 2 weeks later. I met a young woman approximately 28 years old in the market. She dropped shopping, and I helped her pick it up. And when our eyes met, something passed between us. Mutual recognition. And she whispered, "You also know, don't you know? You saw something." And I nodded, and she started crying, right there in the middle of the market, and said I thought she was crazy. I thought I had invented everything, and I comforted her. We say no, you are not. Crazy. It's real. Everything is real. And her name is Amanda. I also had an experience not as dramatic as mine, but an experience where Jesus had appeared and given similar message. Short time. Get ready, help others. Amanda, Marcos, and I started meeting regularly once a week in a cafe or park or someone's house, just talking, sharing, supporting each other. And gradually others started to appear. Marcos's friend, who was also going through awakening, Amanda's colleague, who had started having prophetic dreams, neighbor who had experienced miraculous healing, and suddenly we had small group, approximately 8 people, nothing formal, nothing organized, just souls who had been touched, who knew something big was coming, who were getting ready. The financial situation, which was disastrous, inexplicably began to improve. The transport company where I worked before the collapse called me, offering a better position than before, with a higher salary. I didn't look for them. They looked for me. They said they remembered me as I was always trustworthy. They wanted me back, and it was perfect synchronicity because I was about to be evicted. I was about to lose my apartment. The owner had already sent me a notice, so this job was literally an answer to prayer, answered at the last moment. Possible relationship with ex-wife, although there was no romantic reconciliation, improved drastically. She noticed a change in me. She noticed that I stopped. After drinking, I noticed that I was more present, calmer, more at peace, and we began to talk civilly for the first time in over a year, and my daughters Julia and Mariana began to visit me again. They began to slowly rebuild trust that had been destroyed. Relationship with my daughters became an absolute priority, not because it had to be, but because I deeply understood that love and relationships are the only things that matter in the end, that money, career, possessions, all of this evaporates, but love remains, love echoes into eternity. Months passed and transformation continued. It was not linear. I had bad days, days when doubt came back, days when I caught myself thinking, maybe I imagined everything, maybe it was an elaborate hallucination. But then something happened. Small synchronicity message from someone in the group. Sudden memory of that face in those eyes, and certainty came back. Certainty that it was real, that mission is real, that time is really running out. And as I lived intentionally, as I made conscious choices to love, to forgive, to serve, to raise my frequency, something fascinating started to happen. I started to attract people without trying, without preach, without proselytizing people. Simply appeared in my life. People in crisis, people seeking answers, people ready to listen. First was a woman on the bus, crying silently. I sat next to her. I offered a handkerchief, and she started to vent. Her husband had left her. She felt hopeless, without a purpose, and I simply listened. I didn't try to fix it. I didn't give cheap advice. I was just there, and in the end she said thank you. I needed that. I didn't know how much, I just needed someone to listen, and I felt internal direction. Now it's time to share, so I briefly told my story. Not all the details, not I fought a demon because I felt it would be too much, but I told her about having found Jesus, about the message of love and hope, about time being short, and she listened with wide eyes, and in the end she said, I believe in you. I don't know why, but I believe you just changed my life. This repeated itself several times over the course of months. Man in the park, woman in the neighboring doctor's office, in the elevator. People appearing synchronistically at the exact moment they were open, ready, desperate enough to listen. And each time I shared a little more or a little less, depending on what I felt the person could receive, and some rejected. They thought I was crazy. They quickly walked away, but others received it like water in the desert. They began their own journeys of transformation. Some joined our small group, others went their own ways, but everyone was touched, everyone received seed, and I trusted that Jesus would grow that seed in his time, and a year has passed since that impossible night, then year and a half, then almost 2 years. And now we are in December of 2025, and the date that the devil mentioned that Jesus confirmed is dangerously close, less than a year left. If it is before the end of 2026, less than 12 months, and signs are everywhere for those who have eyes to see global political instability, increasing natural catastrophes, intensifying earthquakes in unusual places, extreme weather breaking all records, and most importantly, spiritual signs, people awakening in unprecedented numbers, true Christians not nominally religious, but true followers of Christ increasing rapidly, while institutional church is emptying because people are tired of dead religion, of powerless ritual hypocrisy, are hungry for real, by authentic, by experiential, and are finding as they sincerely seek supernatural encounters, increasing prophetic dreams, visions, miraculous healings, angelic manifestations, ordinary people having extraordinary experiences because the veil between natural and supernatural is getting thinner as we get closer to the appointed time, and our group small has grown now. We are approximately 25 people of all ages, from all backgrounds, some rich, some poor, some educated, some simple, but all united by one thing. We know that Jesus is coming soon, and we are preparing ourselves, not building bunkers, not stockpiling food, although practical wisdom has its place, but preparing ourselves spiritually. Dying to self-forgiving offenses, releasing bitterness, serving humbly, loving impossible, living each day as if it were the last, because it may be. Because when Jesus comes, when the sky tears, when the trumpet sounds, I want to be found faithful. I want hear well done, good servant. I want to be among those who shine, who rise, who are transformed. And to this day, almost 2 years later, I still haven't completely overcome it. I still wake up some nights at 3 a.m. with my heart racing, remembering that experience. I still cry spontaneously when I think about that unconditional love in those deep eyes, in those marked hands. I still carry the weight of knowing that I have seen a mission that I didn't ask for, but accepted. Scream. I want to shake them. I want to force them to wake up, but I know I can't. I know every person has free will. I know I can only plant seeds and trust God for growth. So I keep living one day at a time, doing my job, loving my family, serving where I can, and waiting, watching, praying, because I know any time it could happen, any day it could be, the day when the sky will tear, when Jesus will appear, when everything will change eternally, and when that happens, when I see that face. Again, not in the middle dimension, but descending in indescribable glory, I promise myself that I will have no regrets, that I will have lived well, that I will have loved well, that I will have served well, that I will have been a light, however small or weak, to those around me. And now, I need to speak directly to you, who made it to the end of this story, who heard every word that remained through this long journey, because if you are here now, it is no coincidence, it is no chance, you were guided, your soul recognized truth. In these words, your intuition said, this is important, I need to hear this, and let me tell you, you are absolutely right, because everything I shared, every detail, every emotion, every impossible encounter is truth, as true as any tangible thing you have ever touched. And the reason you are listening now is because you are also being awakened. You, too, is being prepared. You are also part of the group of those who will see Jesus, return in glory, laugh, and not only will you see, but you will be transformed. You will be taken. You will be recognized as His. If you make conscious choice now to surrender your life to live in love, to prepare yourself spiritually, and maybe you have doubts. Maybe part of you thinks this is crazy story, made up by unbalanced man, and I completely understand. I would have thought the same before that night. But let me ask you some questions. You always felt that there was more than reality that we see is not all there is. You always questioned religious dogmas, feeling that truth is being hidden or distorted. You always had deep intuition that we are living in end times, that something great is about to happen. You have always felt deep within your being that you have a greater purpose, that you were created for something significant. Even if you don't know exactly what, if you answered yes to any of these questions, then your soul already knows. Your soul is trying to tell you what your rational mind resists. You know that this message is true. You feel resonance with these words, and this feeling, this intuition is Holy Spirit within you, confirming, witnessing, saying, yes, this is real. Pay attention. Get ready, because time is short. And if this story touched something deep inside you, if you felt goosebumps at certain moments, if tears came to your eyes, if your heart quickened when I described Jesus, then leave your light right now, because this simple gesture, this click does more than you imagine, helps this message reach other souls. Ready? Like you help algorithm understand that this content is valuable, it is important, it is necessary, and each additional person who listens could be another soul saved, another heart transformed. Another life changed for eternity, and that matters more than anything else in this world. Because when Jesus comes back, when everything but fall apart, the only things that will remain are souls who chose love, who chose light, who chose Him. So if you want to continue receiving messages like this, if you want to be part of this community of awakened people, if you want to be prepared when the moment comes, then subscribe to this channel now and turn on the notification bell. Because every story we share, here, every testimony, every revelation has been carefully chosen to prepare you, to strengthen you, to give you courage and certainty that you are not alone, that others around the world are also seeing, are also knowing, are also preparing. And leave in the comments, tell me, have you ever had inexplicable experiences, supernatural encounters, prophetic dreams? Do you feel in your spirit that time is running out, that Jesus is coming soon? Are you ready to surrender your life completely, to live in radical love? To become light in the midst of growing darkness, because every comment you leave, every testimony you share, strengthens this. Community creates network of light around the planet, prepares the way for the Lord, and remember, you did not get here by chance. You did not hear this story by coincidence. You were guided, directed, brought to this exact moment because your soul, you need this message, because your spirit is ready to awaken, because you have a role to play in the final days before the return. And that role may seem small. It may simply be living well, loving well, serving well. But never underestimate impact of transformed life. Because you living in high frequency, you emanating love, you being light, affects collective. Morphogenetic field elevates planetary consciousness, facilitates awakening of others, sets the stage for global transformation that is coming. So carry this truth with responsibility, with reverence, with appropriate urgency, live each day as if it were your last, because honestly, it can be love the people around you. Anyway, the difficult ones, even the ones that hurt you, because the time to hold grudges is over. Forgive completely, let go completely, because you can't carry heavy baggage when Jesus comes. Serve humbly wherever you are. Be extraordinary in the ordinary, be light in dark places, and above all, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, not on signs, not on prophecies, not on dates, but on Him. Because when He appears, when you see that face, those eyes, those hands, nothing else will matter. Absolutely nothing. Just that you chose Him, that you lived for Him, that you loved Him above everything and everyone. And always remember, the return of Jesus is not about Him descending from the clouds physically, although that will happen. It is about you awakening to the divinity that has always existed within it. Is about you recognizing that you and Christ are one, that separation has always been illusion, that the kingdom of God is not somewhere far away, but within your own heart, waiting to be activated. And when enough people awaken, when critical mass is reached, when the collective light of humanity reaches a specific frequency then and only then will Jesus manifest fully, lethally, not as an invader, not as a conqueror, but as a bridegroom coming for a bride who has finally prepared herself, who has finally purified herself, who has finally become worthy, not by works, but by love, by choice, by total surrender. So awaken, beloved, awaken now, because time is short. Choose consciously, raise your living frequency in love and prepare yourself. Because the return of Jesus is not an abstract theological concept, it is an inevitable, concrete, imminent event that will happen before 2027. And you want to be ready when that day comes. You want to hear it, well done. You want to be transformed. You want rise. So choose now, choose life, choose light, choose Jesus. Because after he comes, after the sky is torn, after the separation happens, there will be no second chance. There will be no negotiations. There will be no justifications accepted. It will be too late to choose. You will have reaped what you sowed all your life. So sow well now, live well now, love well now, because eternity is closer than you imagine. And that is all I have to share. This is my story, my mission, my testimony of the impossible that has become my reality. And until the next story, until the next meeting, remember, you are loved, you are seen, you are known completely, and despite all your faults, despite all your shadows, Jesus loves you with eternal, unconditional, unbreakable love, and is coming back, not to condemn, but to save, not to destroy, but to restore, not to punish, but to gather. So be ready, watch, pray, love, and wait, because he comes soon. Very soon, the bridegroom comes. And the question that defines eternity is simple. Will you be ready when he arrives?